It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this international webinar being organized by the Department of English, Netaji Nagar Day College, Calcutta, this 15th of August 2021. So historically speaking, 15th of August has great significance. In the year 1057, on the 15th of August, Macbeth, the same person who has been commemorated by Shakespeare in a play, he was killed by Malcolm. Then, in the year 1769, Emperor Napoleon was born. In 1771, Sir Walter Scott was born on the 15th of August. On 15th August 1947, India became independent from autocratic British rule. And it is also on the 15th of August, 75 years before India won independence in the year 1872, that Sri Aurobindo was born, a person who is quite familiar to Indians, but the name is familiar, but we do not really know much about him. So, to familiarize Sri Aurobindo to us, life, his activities, his role in the freedom movement of India, the way he
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Shantanu.
Professor Dr. Lakshmi.
We can't hear you.
Sorry?
Shantanu, you're not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Now you are.
There's some network problem, network issues in my area. I don't know why it's this happening. Anyway, so to familiarize us with the figure, the personality of Sri Aurobindo, we have Professor Dr. Lakshmi Bandla Mudi, who is Professor of Psychology at City University of New York, and he will acquaint us with Sri Aurobindo in great detail. Before that, I request Dr. Shonali Banerjee Josh, the principal of Netaji Nagar Day College, to speak a few words on the occasion.
Thank you, Dr. Shantanu. I hope I am audible to all.
Yes, you are audible.
A very good evening to respected resource person, madam, and to my dear colleagues and all dear students present in this international webinar. It gives me immense pleasure to deliver the welcome address on this very happy occasion of inauguration of our year-long celebrations of the 150th birth anniversary of Sri Sri Aurobindo. He was a great power born on Indian soil, and we all feel that the youth of today, our students, must become more and more familiar with what Sri Aurobindo really was, his teachings, how he fought for, how his involvement in the freedom struggle of the country, and how his transformation from there into the spiritual divinity. For knowing all this, we have with us Professor Lakshmi Bandlamudi. I am very excited to know that Madam will be addressing us, delivering her talk from so far away. We are in the eastern part of the globe, and Madam is sitting there on the western part of the earth. So, even at this age, I am very, very excited. So I really feel that this webinar being organized by the Department of English, Netaji Nagar Day College, will be a grand success. My request to all my dear students to be you really are fortunate to be part of this international webinar, and I myself I am very excited to hear from Madam. So I will not waste any more time. We are really honored that Madam has gladly accepted our invitation, and she promptly replied back when I sent the mail to her. So, Madam, thank you very much from on behalf of our college. So, with these words, I would hand over to Shantanu. Thank you, Shantanu.
Thank you very much, our respected principal, Dr. Sonali Banerjee Josh, for your encouragement and support as always. It is really a matter of great pleasure that Professor Lakshmi Bandlamudi has taken time out of her busy schedule to deliver her lecture today on this momentous occasion of the birth of Sri Aurobindo. I now request her, our resource person for today, Dr. Lakshmi Bandlamudi, who is Professor of Psychology at City University of New York, to take over and deliver her valuable lecture to us.
Thank you so much. It is indeed an honor, a privilege to be participating on this momentous occasion. It's 8 a.m. New York time. So you probably have already celebrated the Independence Day, and it's a little early evening for you. First and foremost, I want to thank Dr. Sonali Banerjee Josh, who has given me the invitation, formal invitation, and of course Shantanu Ganguly. Shantanu, before I proceed, can we see some people? Otherwise, I'm just simply staring at a blank screen because it won't be interactive. At least a few people, if they can be visible, it would be helpful, including you and perhaps Professor Josh. Because otherwise it feels like I'm just talking to some, vacant wall or something. Thank you. I see somebody here. That way I know I'm talking to some live human beings rather than, So first and foremost, as I said, thank you, Shantanu, for this kind words about me and even inviting me on this momentous occasion. Let me at the very beginning state it very clearly. I am not an expert on Sri Aurobindo. I am only a humble devotee of Sri Aurobindo. It has been a long journey through his works. So I don't want to create any illusion to the students or to the faculty that I'm not a sadhak. I just humbly go to, every time I visit India, I go to Pondicherry, and I've been to some important places. Every day I have quite a bit of academic collaborative work in Baroda. So every time I go there, I make sure I visit the ashram there, where he spent considerable amount of time doing quite a bit of writing on Vande Mataram in that room. So just to feel and absorb the vibrations there, I visit. It is my dream to go and visit the Alipur jail where he had darshan of Lord Krishna. But definitely, since I grew up in Chennai, I do very frequently. Anytime I visit India, Pondicherry is one of the places that I always go and spend time primarily, and that's one of the things that the COVID crisis has prevented me from doing so. So I feel very drained of a certain energy because I'm not able to kind of, in general, coming to India itself is a very, whatever are the other chaos and everything, I find it very energizing and exciting. And I've definitely been to Kolkata and given lectures over there. So hopefully sometime in near future that I'll be able to see you all in person. That is the sort of the dream. So today is it's a very momentous occasion truly a privilege to be speaking about on this day, because it is both the Independence Day of India and the birth date of the great Sri Aurobindo. I'm not, the way I'm going to sort of present this rather conversation or a presentation is not so much give you some informational details about Sri Aurobindo, because that you can grasp it anyway. Yeah. But in a very humble way, I want to talk about the approach and what exactly, see, it's like Mother India, the Indian civilization. Sri Aurobindo also is an ocean. It is impossible to grasp all that. You just simply touch the surface and gain water. So his works are really remarkable, and therefore you can only enter that world. So and in general, I think that stands as an emblem for the way students should be approaching their academic life. And there is definitely a very worldwide, I would say, a crisis in terms of our interpretive categories. So what is it that we may learn? I mean, you must have all heard of things like we are living in a post-truth world. That is really very tragic. And so what I want to emphasize is Sri Aurobindo's truth consciousness. That if you want to put a one word or a one phrase for Sri Aurobindo's sort of incredible, I mean, I'm practically surrounded by his books. I pulled them all from my bookshelf, and there is a whole shelf of it, because this is what needs to be revived. And that's why I gave how did he respond to the call of Mother India? Because, who is Sri Aurobindo? We can, all the birth date, Shantanu already has given, 1872, and then he attained the Samadhi on December 5th, 1950. And so even to this day, when we go to Aurobindo Ashram, or whether it is in Delhi, or whether it is in Baroda, or whether it is in Pondicherry, there are relics there, and we feel the vibrations. Or even when I just simply hold this book in my hand of Savitri, it is an incredible feeling. So don't even approach any of Sri Aurobindo's works as if with all our academic habits of having certain categories and parsing the words and analyzing it and breaking it apart. That is not going to work at all. One of the greatest things about great writers, great thinkers, is that they become generators of ideas. They become condensers of cultural memory. They are repositories of great knowledge, truth consciousness, integral yoga. Those are the phrases that we can associate with Sri Aurobindo. So who is he? When you look at it, it's impossible to sort of put him in one particular slot. Is he a poet, a philosopher, a historian, an interpreter of Indian culture, civilization, a spiritual leader, a teacher, a patriot, a revolutionary, a supreme seer, yogi? He's all of this. So there's no point in trying to sort of compartmentalize these incredible variations of Sri Aurobindo, because it is the wholesome nature. So what is it that we can, gain by studying or even entering the world. Actually, I won't even say study, because once you open the book, as I said, don't even try to analyze it. Just allow it to do its work on you. That is the important aspect of it. So his works are really innumerable. One of the things that I have it on my bookshelf and right in front of me is he wrote a poem on Mother Kali, and this is on the banks of River Narmada, on the outskirts of Baroda. When I read that poem, I said, whenever I go to Gujarat next time, I have to go visit that place. So that's how it inspires you, right? You read a poem, you read something, you want to visit that place, you want to sort of understand what is the power there. So this poem is called The Stone Goddess. And one of the things that we find, which is so true to so many creative, they all have the grace of Mother Kali, whether it is Ramakrishna Paramhams or whether it is Kalidasa or whether it is Sri Aurobindo, and some of the greats from Bengal. Kalidasa was elsewhere, but they do have, because for all creative energy, knowledge can come from Mata Saraswati, but creative energy can come only from, Ma Kali, because she is the wholesomeness of it, and so I always feel incredibly inspired. So coming back to the Sri Aurobindo, what exactly is he talking about? Everything is about truth consciousness, integral yoga. The integral yoga is not just simply about movements of the body, but rather it is the alignment. Body is a finite entity, right? Whereas the inner consciousness is really infinite. And it is the sort of the alignment, So the bodily topography, it has its own rhythms. Those rhythms must be synchronized with the cosmic, rhythm. And therefore, what happens is, and it is not an easy task, whether it is Sri Aurobindo, he makes it very clear. This is not an overnight endeavor. This is not a quick fix. This is some of the things that I think students must be really, because we want quick answers. We want superficial. These are all lazy politics and lazy academic endeavors. It doesn't work that way. It needs to percolate. It needs to coagulate in our mind. It needs to enter our system. We need to internalize it. It is really philosophy of action. We can say Sri Aurobindo practically for so many decades sat in a small room in Pondicherry, but it is from there his whole work is really about call for action. It is really karma yoga that he is emphasizing. It is not even the jnana yoga. It is really karma yoga. In a very interesting kind of a contrast, Sri Adi Shankaracharya traveled all over India. His method was karma yoga. What he was propagating was really jnana yoga. Whereas Sri Aurobindo pretty much stayed put, in Pondicherry. But the number of writings that he has done. So just to sort of show some of for the students who are, just simply reading Vande Mataram is in such a thick, fat book. So many, no thinker in India. We have to say this. He stands unparalleled. He began his, it was very interesting. His early life, the father was incredibly anglicized, and he was sent by the age of 7 to Manchester, and I've actually been to Manchester for a conference, and he grew up there, in a very alien land, so to speak, and the father wanted nothing to do with a Indian civilization to even touch him. But look at him, he became the rescuer of the Indian. So, they, much later when he, in the Alipore jail, when he had the darshan and he was questioning, what is it, what is my role? And then he kind of said, it is not just simply the exterior freedom, right? Freedom of the nation that is important, but it is the freedom of the so when you look at, when you read Sri Aurobindo, some of the things that we need to absolutely pay attention to, he's talking about interior truth, internal freedom. It is not the exteriority, it is the internal freedom, the interior truth, it is the wholesomeness. And that is what is sort of critical. And we cannot lead, I think, for the students, we cannot lead life on surface and expect to, you might enjoy some temporary kind of benefits and rewards. But that is not what is going to take you the long way. There is a vastness of time, vastness of space. The way he described my work is on actually on Mahabharata, and the way he describes it is Mahabharata is an epic that outmeasures space and outlasts time. It's a very beautiful phrase. When you read Sri Aurobindo, you'll pick up so much phrases, you pick up so much imagery, you pick up so much language. I cannot get through a book without having a dictionary, beside me, because that is the power of language. And, so we live in an era today with these Twitter and, it is so much of exteriority, how you appear. Appearances become important. That, he says, forget it. You have to get to the depth of it, right? So the way so Vande Mataram and the other classic work and incredible number of essays is the human cycle, the ideal of human. He really celebrates the cornucopia of differences. That is the very nature of our existence. But differences not in a fragmented form, but rather there is the human unity. And it is not simply sort of saying in an undifferentiated manner that everything is. See, sometimes you hear the Vedantists speak in this manner, that we are all one global family, human race, and it is very undifferentiated. That is actually problematic. Because then we commit the error of pulling everybody into our orbit. Sri Aurobindo says it is only after the differentiation, after incredible variations, then you have to find the unity, and that is oneness. Oneness is, very difficult to achieve. That is also a form of sadhana, in order to be able to arrive at that level. So it cannot be in this kind of undifferentiated, no differences. No, earthly life is incredibly variegated. It is really incredible variation is there. And we should celebrate that variation. Not just simply, try to erase those differences. In fact, a kind of mature love is that you are not like me, but I still like you. We have to be, that is oneness. Not like, the other is not some narcissistic extension of me. That's really very prosaic, quotidian, and it is not recommended. But there is a sort of a higher form that is, needed. And thirdly, he talks quite a bit about what, unlike Gandhi, he was not this militant pacifist or an idealist, because in order to vanquish evil, sometimes war becomes necessary. And he was very much sort of a participant, one of the chapter, and that's what sort of took him to the Alipore jail. And for everything, there is a certain purpose. There are lots of stories when you sort of read into that about even the the judge in that case didn't know what to do with it because he was completely overpowered by the sheer brilliance and the calmness that Sri Aurobindo exuded. And at that time, when he has the darshan of India, that's why I want to go and visit. I don't know how many of you have been to the Alipur jail, exactly that very cell where Sri Aurobindo spent a year of his life. And then he escaped and he came into Pondicherry because that was a French colony. So, there he says, your purpose in life is more than just simply freedom for the country, which might happen, but even greater purpose is to be able to rescue the Indian civilization. So because it is the force and the power of Mother India that he is able to recover, reclaim, and show the force of it. This is not some superficial notions of nationalism. I don't know, these words are very much have become buzzwords and almost become dirty. I don't think even I've read Tagore's Nationalism a zillion times, tiny little book. And sometimes when I hear the gross abuse of that, it is really very disheartening because what they meant and what the sense of it and how that is being interpreted in popular culture is vastly different. And so the nuanced thinking is sort of the key word, to approach Sri Aurobindo. So what exactly is the truth? In terms of his magnum opus is really Savitri. As you can see, my book is rather old and I have all these little marks on this. If Savitri is this sort of the poetry, Life Divine is the prose. If one is the poetry and the other is the prose. And there you do, it is really, I'm going to read a few passages. Before I do that, one of the other, in terms of the integral yoga, unlike the Vedantas, Sri Aurobindo never saw the life on earth as an illusion that you need to escape from this world. No, you have to find divinity right in our physical body, in our earthly existence. That is very, very critical. And the real challenge, and I want to also sort of talk very briefly about, so that it has a certain personal, touch to it, so that you understand. One of my very first book was Movements with the Cosmic Dancer, and this was something that I wrote after my first trip to Kailash Mansarovar. So to me, when I read about the miracle of descent, and that's one of the titles of one of the chapters in this book, and that became that physical experience. When you are trying to ascend, to great heights, to the mountaintop, because from Mansarovar, when you're circumambulating the mountain, Mount Kailash, you have to, from 15,000 feet, go all the way up to 19,500 feet and then descend, back. In the ascent process, it becomes an emblem for philosophical quest or spiritual quest. The ascent, you feel that it is difficult. You are gasping for breath. You're, really, it almost becomes a built-in pranayama, inhaling and exhaling, and that's all you're concentrating. There is nothing much going on. And you think all your efforts are complete when you get to that mount, to the top, But the real challenge is in the descent, Why is it because it can be very slippery, because it can be, so that stands as an, so the title of my chapter is The Miracle of Descent, very much inspired by Sri Aurobindo, because all the abstract ideas, grasping them is the easier part. But the real challenge is application of it to the earthly, to the daily life, to our lived life. That is where the real challenge is. Not so much, if you just have if your neurons are nicely fired up and your, mind is, intellect is reasonably sharp, you may very well be able to grasp some abstract ideas. Vast majority of the people struggle, and even the sort of the weaponization of knowledge and misuse of knowledge, abuse, it's almost like asura shakti. The asuras also do the penance, but they just don't know how to apply it. There is no ethical compass, over there, and therefore, so the descent is where the major struggle is. In ascent, there is a kind of abstraction, concentration, right? A kind of an deductive logic. So those things play a very critical role. Um, the fascinating, the astonishing aspect of Sri Aurobindo is he has touched upon, whether it is the Bhagavad Gita, right? I can't study Bhagavad Gita without his notes on Bhagavad Gita, or whether it is about Upanishads, or whether it is about Kalidasa. He has done some translations of Kalidasa. The only area that I am academically working on right now, that remained untouched, kind of, and actually many, Kashmir Saivism. That is what I'm working on right now. So people like Natish, Abhinav Gupta, who wrote on Natya Shastra, those sorts of things. If there was anyone who had the capacity to, touch upon that and translate it and write an interpretation of it, it could have been none other than Sri Aurobindo. Because that is, and there is a lot of converging points. In fact, as I approach these esoteric Sanskrit texts, it is really some familiarity with Sri Aurobindo that allows me to somewhat, I can't even say, just at least touch the surface. At least I kind of know that I'm in the right path or something. So that becomes very, very, critical. So so what exactly do we, there are many, in terms of the modern day Gurujis, there are plenty of people who are interpreters of text, but their, that interpretation or that lifespan is just because they have not left behind anything, many of them. But if you want to know what really living God is like and what the relationship is like, I have to say, there are only two spiritual leaders that I care very deeply about. And one is Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Vivekananda, and the other is Sri Aurobindo. Interestingly, both, it's quite I don't know how I'm become so audacious to address a group of Bengalis about the two great Bengali giants. But nevertheless, we are all Indians, so who cares? They don't just belong to any one region. And actually, even in what is interesting is, in any part of the world for academic conferences that I go to, the scholars who mention two names are Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Sri Aurobindo. So there are plenty of people across the globe who have been inspired. So when I feel very vulnerable, I open up the Kathamrit and read. Somehow it is very comforting. It's almost like a direct access. Whereas when your mind is the digestive power of the mind is sharp and your neurons are fired up, that's when I even dare to open up Sri Aurobindo's books. Because you need that kind of energy. So what then is this sort of integral yoga that he's talking about? I want to sort of begin a few passages, at least for students, to or some poems or something that just to understand the feel for Sri Aurobindo. He begins the book of Savitri. The title, the canto one, is the symbol of dawn. Dawn is a very that hour. There is nothing more magical. It's from this absolute darkness. I've trekked quite a bit in Himalayas, in not I went to Kailash Mansarovar twice, and in addition to that, I've traveled pretty much across India, and there is something that is so remarkable about that art. I'm also trained in Carnatic music, so that early morning ragas, that slow kind of an ascent, is really very, very magical, and that's how he begins this in this book. It says, "It was the hour before the gods awake, across the path of divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night alone, in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence's marge." This some of the things that absolutely fascinate you when you're reading Sri Aurobindo is one is the hour of the darkness, and that sort of a movement from darkness to brightness, and to be able, that's why I think in Indian traditions we say this is the Brahma Muhurat, right? You wake up at when it is really pitch dark, and then you feel the rise. So in many way, they would say wake up at 4 o'clock and start studying. That was a sort of the habit that our parents and teachers inculcated in us, because even when my mother still wakes up at 3 or sometimes, and that's when she says it's quiet and it is lovely and the mind is able to grasp, and therefore it is the hour of dawn. Savitri is a small story coming to truth consciousness. It's a short story in Mahabharata about Savitri and her husband Satyavan. The name itself is very critical. Satyavan, truth. What she is rescuing is not just her husband. What she is immortalizing is the truth.